good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to Series 7 of the Climate Pioneers Show. This series, we are focused on a topic which is very close to my heart: hiring and building teams. Hiring people is the most important thing that you will do as a founder, and how you build out that early stage team is absolutely crucial because it sets the foundation upon which the rest of your business will grow. And throughout the course of this series, we're going to be speaking to founders, investors, coaches, and specialists across the full spectrum of HR and talent, giving you access to valuable insights as you build your business. And today I'm joined by Ed Jervis, CEO of Inclusion Crowd and founder of the Inclusion Think Tank. Ed's work spans consulting and coaching, working with organizations from huge multinational corporates through to not-for-profits and startups, and helping them to create inclusive working cultures, as well as doing higher level advocacy and policy work, looking to drive wider societal change. So Ed, thank you so much for joining me.
No, it's a pleasure. I'm glad to be here.
Fab. And so look, a lot of founders that I talk to are genuinely concerned about diversity or the lack thereof, right, in their teams. And there seems to be, in the world I work in, a genuine desire to recruit more diverse teams. But in my opinion, I think that's only half the battle, right? And I feel like people aren't talking about inclusion as much as they should, because it's one thing to bring in a more diverse workforce, but if you haven't set the ground rules right, if you haven't created the right inclusive culture, people aren't going to want to stay, right? And you end up with a retention problem. So for me, inclusion is where it all starts. I mean, yeah, just throwing that out as a starter for 10. Would you agree? Am I wrong? Am I right? Would you challenge that? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree. And I think that we've been distracted by words, diversity, inclusion, what words we should use, the fear of words, language, how to come across that you're not being tokenistic, how to come across that you're not you're as briefed as you should be, you're across topics and issues as much as you should be. So there's a whole competing landscape around language, the fear of it, and it's creating this really artificial paralysis / performative set of behaviors that we're seeing in industry. And I think you're right that tackling that at the top and from the outset is absolutely key. And, for me, I sort of park diversity and inclusion for a moment. And I say to founders, I say to CEOs, or, doesn't matter the size of the organization. I think that there's a moment of inflection where you say, what is it I'm trying to achieve? Before I go and I run away with myself and I get myself down a rabbit hole and, HR are involved and L&D are involved and, D&I concepts are being thrown around. What is it? Can you define the problem? What do you want to look like? What do you want it to feel like in your organization? And that is usually super simple. I want anybody who is the best at what they do to feel like they can come and work in my organization, and we will support them to succeed. They succeed, we succeed, right? Really simple, high level, bullshitty, hold each other's hands, general 101 stuff. The delivery of that, the execution of that, the implementation of that is something quite different. And that's where we start to come into having to introduce some of the D&I concepts in order for us to achieve that. So I agree with you. Inclusion is about, how does it feel to be part of this organization? How does it feel to be you? Are you attracted to come here, and what would not make you attracted to come here? And as you quite rightly said, that retention piece, it's all well and good going out and attracting diverse talent into an organization and selling them the dream, and then not setting them up for success. So that is 101. And I suppose we'll get into it in the conversation, but we have some models to sort of break that out a bit and break that down, where we can start to look at it in sort of practical chunks, because it's quite overwhelming. No matter where you are in the journey, sometimes if you're quite far along, you've got a lot of unpacking to do. And if you're early on, you've got an opportunity to get it right. But both of them come with challenges.
And where do you see, because when I was doing some research ahead of this episode, I saw one of the things you had posted was that 60% of minority employees said they had seen no improvement in their company. And yet so many more companies are talking about diversity and inclusion and DEI now. So where's the disconnect? Is it the fact that it's very performative and the actual change isn't filtering through? Where's that coming from?
Yeah, I mean, look, I get a lot of criticism for sort of shit stirring, if you want, for a better word. I call it disrupting, but it's truth telling. It's saying, yes, we've got packages of solutions. Yes, we can fix all of it. These are commercial people related problems. There are fixes for all of this. We've put rovers on Mars. We can fix some of these issues, but we can't do it if you're going to continue this performative BS and fake it, because you can't afford to fake it in any other aspect of your business. You wouldn't have fake it in sales. You wouldn't fake it in marketing. You wouldn't fake it in terms of, your growth, your scalability plans. You just wouldn't accept this level of BS in any other part of your business. But yet when it comes to something as fundamentally as important as the people that are responsible for driving your success and what they look like and where they come from and what levels of innovation they're bringing to your organization and what all of that does to your bottom line, McKinsey are sort of bored bashing their head against the wall with another report to say there is a bottom line, there's an EBITDA, there's a profitability metric here. So the first thing is just to call out the BS and say, is what you're doing performative? When we talk about,
I think sometimes they don't realize it is, right? Sometimes they don't even realize they're being performative. They think, well, but we're doing the right things, no?
Yeah. We've got a staff network group. We sponsored Pride. We had a bake sale for Black History Month. Why is our board all white? Does that not fix it? Was that not enough? The truth is, no, it's not. No, it's not.
Yeah.
They all have a place. And sometimes when I'm sort of, in full flow, I can misrepresent myself in saying those things aren't important. They are, and they have a place. But it's like we're jumping to solution, we're jumping to prescription, we're jumping to prescribing something before we've really done the diagnosis. You would never do that in medicine. You wouldn't. The diagnosis process is question upon question, analysis upon analysis, digging and digging and digging before you jump to prescribing something. And that we are making that mistake commercially, that because of the pressure of optics, because of the pressure of client expectations, candidate expectations, you just need to turn on the news and look at recent election results that we'll not talk about, social expectations. We are jumping to prescribing stuff that is wasting time and money, and it's actually eroding the effectiveness of good DEI. And that's a real problem, because there's stuff to fix within the DE&I community. If you think sitting in your organization today that the fix in 2025 is some microaggression and unconscious bias training, and suddenly your senior leadership team are going to be bought in to a process that's going to drive substantial change throughout your organization, it frustrates me, as I'm sure you can tell, that we take such a non-commercial view. We've allowed this to become fluffy, woolly, nice to have, second to operations, second to growth, and not the strategic, golden ticket that it presents itself. In the next 10 years, you were talking about founders or people who have the opportunity to get this right from the beginning. People who really get this and take it seriously and embed it in culture and embed it in the way they do business. They are going to be able to outperform people who are further along than they are now, who are bigger than they are now, because they are reading the room. The horse hasn't bolted. The horse is 3 farms down the road. So that's a real opportunity for organizations that are more agile and that can really take an authentic view of this, because they will eat it up, and they'll eat it up because A, it's the right thing to do, but B, because their clients are struggling with this. You know, the clients aren't stupid. The clients know we've been at this for a while. We've been doing it. You know, we've been doing all the things that, you know, everybody does, and we've rolled out. But actually, if we look at rate of change, systemic, institutional, representative rate of change, clients are really, really struggling. And so why would they go to a supplier, a recruitment supplier, that talks a good game, but actually can't do it for themselves? You know, I think that's the biggest measure is, you know, we are great in your sector. We're the best in your sector. We're super fantastic. We're going to fill some gaps for you that you couldn't do without us. But by the way, we're struggling to do it for ourselves. It's just not a good look, and it won't fly, you know, 25 to 2030. You know, look at what that landscape's going to look like if we you know, if we look over the last 3 to 5 years and we play that forward. It's a huge risk and a huge opportunity.
Absolutely. And as you said, I mean, our listeners, my client base, are all sort of early stage startups, so comparatively early in their business and talent journeys. And so have this really great, I mean, it's much more complex and difficult, I would imagine, for a large organization to, you know, put this stuff in, to retrofit this stuff, right, and have to unpick, you know, really messy stuff. That on the founder side, early stage, you know, they've got a blank piece of paper essentially with which to get this right from the outset. So how early is too early to start thinking about this stuff? Do you start thinking about what you want your culture to look like before you even have a culture, when it's just you and one other person? And how, I mean, how can they start to think about what their processes and their operating rhythms and how they work are to create an environment that's going to work for people?
It's never too early. But what I would say is it's too early for prescription. It is not too early for looking at the cause. What kind of organization do I want to scale? What solutions do I want to provide my clients? When I'm talking to my clients about that solution, what gives me credibility? What gives me authenticity that these things matter to me? And that might be taking a period early doors to really get the narrative straight in my head. I see this sector as unrepresentative for X, Y, and Z. As I grow this organization, that is a priority for us, not only because I believe it's the right thing to do, but because I want to serve you and your needs by making sure that my organization can talk to those underrepresented groups in an authentic and credible way, understand their lived experience, understand what they need in the interview process, understand what they're going to need in terms of joining your organization, really understanding that. So I think getting that narrative piece in your own mind, that doesn't have to be an external thing. That's an internal, introspective moment of, where do I show up on this? Do I care about these issues? I'm not saying people are bad people and they don't care, but if we look at our priorities of life, we were talking just before this session, you know, we've moved this around twice today. I think I have one child with a throat infection, one child with an ear infection, and my husband and I are dying. And, you know, so, you know, we're all working ourselves, and we all have stuff going on, and you're trying to scale a business and balance all these things. So when I say, do you care about those? I'm saying, where do they show up in the planning? Where do they show up in the design? Where do you feel that you have development areas? Even, you know, from a personal development perspective, if a client starts talking to you about some of the challenges they have in terms of people in this space, and the underrepresentation of senior women, the underrepresentation or the challenges of onboarding folks, you know, you know, from a neurodiverse background or whatever it may be, you know, where do you show up in that? Where are you speaking? So if that isn't your lived experience, what have you done? So that piece, I would say to founders and startup folks, is your homework. And that's really difficult in a space where you are trying to grow a business. And this is all lovely and well and good, but how do you keep the lights on? I need a client, and, you know, I need revenue, I need to scale, I need to, you know, I need to compete. So that that is a challenge. And I always say a great place to start is storytelling your own experiences and your own journey. There's an expectation that this is all about other people. You know, I'm a white cis man, so I'm talking about, you know, issues that affect people from an ethnicity perspective, from a disability perspective, from whatever, you know. But I have my own story. Do you know what I mean? I'm a gay man. I'm married to a man. He happens to be, from a Muslim background. We've adopted mixed race children. I went to, a state school. I've got chronic illness. I care. I have caring responsibilities. We all have stuff. And I think that getting into the habit of role modeling your own lived experience and not being frightened that you don't have something to say because there's this expectation that, well, I'm not that, and that. That authenticity bleeds through everything you're going to do in your organization and how you scale it. And by role modeling it, that is something that can be done today without having to, getting into the habit and creating those behaviors. And then that leads to psychological safety. Right. And one of the biggest mistakes I see in sales related industries, certainly in startup environments, is toxic positivity. We can only be, we can't be naysaying, we can't be moaning, we can't be whinging. We've so much to achieve. We've got to be over there by yesterday. We've got to achieve that. And I just caution clients and particularly folks in early stages around being mindful of positive toxicity, because it's emotional contagion. It's so contagious, and it's bleeding from you, and it's come from the culture you're setting. And it really does start in those inception moments, because as you bring people into this cycle, the problem that we have with the larger organizations is there's a nucleus of power, and having proximity to that power is a human driver. And we see it all the time, that people will do and say and act and to get to that nucleus of power. And what that looks like is asking ourselves, who's not near that nucleus, right? When bigger organizations, who's not there, who's missing? But when you're a founder, or when you're scaling, that is where that seed is planted, because as you move, people come in and they absorb your behaviors. They absorb what good looks like to you, what it looks like to be close to you, what it looks like, what you respond well to. All of your emotions are contagious. That's the key takeaway.
And how do you counter that and balance that? So you're an early stage tech startup, right? You're an early founding team. You've taken on some VC money to scale with, but inherent with that comes pressure, comes deadlines, comes milestones, comes revenue that needs to be achieved. So there is this baked in pressure and urgency to deliver. Combine that with the fact that, the people that we're speaking to and the people in my network are founders in climate. Okay. So again, there's this kind of, we've got to believe we can make a difference. This extra existential pressure of, well, if we don't do this, the world will burn. Right. So you've got all of these layers of this kind of, as you say, toxic positivity or, pressure mounting on top. So how can you accept that is the reality? That you have these constraints and these pressures, but marry that with how within those constraints do you create a psychologically safe culture?
Yeah, and it's all down to that role modeling. So that authenticity, I call it say what you see, and not being afraid to say what you see, right? So no matter what the topic is, whether it's finance, whether it's DE&I, whether it's obviously within the parameters of whatever grade the people are that you're speaking to, or the levels of trust. Park that for a second. But the principle of say what you see is so powerful. This is where we are. This is how I'm feeling. This is what we need to be. This is where we're not. This is where there's a development area. This is where I think we've got a blind spot. This is where I think the client needs us to be. This is where, saying what you say, and that good old 90s TV show, the catchphrase, that behavior genuinely is very powerful, right? Because what you're doing is a bit like when you do the driving test. One of the things you're allowed to do is you're allowed to describe what you're doing as you're doing it, and that's okay in the test. What you can see, how I'm maneuvering, why I'm waiting for this car to pass. You're allowed to do that because it's really important to demonstrate the thought process they're working out. And I think a lot of leaders, particularly in those high pressure environments, are frightened to expose those development areas or those thought processes or those things. And I think that there's a real confidence, yourself, if you work with confident people. Now there's a balance, right? Because being really successful gives you the confidence, and achieving all this stuff gives you the confidence to be super honest about the shit bits, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because you can go, oh yeah, I was rubbish at this, but that comes from a place of privilege because you have your own proximity to power, your own security, you're financially independent, or your organization is hitting the numbers it needs. So it's easy then to be honest about how you're feeling, where you're at, what that looks like, what your concerns are, what the fixes need to be. And that I think is something that in that maelstrom of drama and trying to achieve the numbers and doing all that sort of stuff is just having a really confident base of saying what you see as you're going through it. That didn't work. That I'm not sure about. This is where I'm currently at with that. I think that needs some consideration. That worked really well. We need to get having that open dialogue, role models to the people around you that they can see you're working out, and also that you're not afraid to bring them into the reality of some of the situations. So the second bit to that is when you're under pressure to hit the numbers is, ultimately to look at the commercial lens. So if that's where you're at and you are in the shit and you are under that pressure and this is it, look at it from a commercial lens. Go after it with a commercial lens. And as you are doing that, apply your human layer to it, right? So you can go after it on the client need. The clients, go to any of your clients' websites and they'll tell you, this is the bit that cracks me up about recruitment, is there is a menu on every one of your clients' websites about the problems that they're experiencing. By 2030, we want to have gender balance. By 2025, we want to, have ethnic representation across. We are working on this. We've signed this charter. The client is screaming out of all the things that they are doing. So there is a way to lead on the commercials to say, actually, we agree with you. Oh, this is a common ground. Oh, this is something that we think we have expertise in helping you with. Oh, because we are really cognizant of this. And because of our size, we are so able to move in this market, and we've adopted these processes, and we believe we can get you the best talent in this space because of X, Y. Leading with commercial health.
The startup, because obviously, we work primarily, and the people listening to this are tech startup founders rather than recruiters, right? And so their clients are going to be corporates as well. What they're providing to them isn't talent, isn't people, it's a product, it's a service. But is there going to be, would that equally play from a commercial perspective?
Completely. It's that storytelling and it's that narrative that ultimately we are able to serve your needs. You are bringing us into your organization as an additional added value. And it's asking yourself, well, where does that value add come from in a landscape of suppliers around the ability to make sure that we live those values. We share your values. If you're looking at sort of public sector tendering, if you're looking at a lot of bids and tenders at the moment, there is a social justice, a social value. There is a whole sort of look at what are we like. And that's what we talked about before, that performative element, where actually if we throw enough shit at the wall, a badge here, a diversity award here, something there, there's a real opportunity for founders and people, that listen to this podcast, who, if they're in that space, is to call bullshit on all of that and say, actually, we are absolutely geared to serve your needs because we are really interested in driving change here, and here. This is how we're embedding it in our organization. We don't buy this. This is noise. We want to make sure that we are giving you, ROI on what we're giving you. This is how we demonstrate it. This is how we live those values. that is such a strategic advantage for people in that position over, I'd say 5 years ago, you would struggle more because it does really drown you out, all this noise about how wonderful people are and, you know, booking a table and a night out in London and slapping our backs. Aren't we all wonderful? You know, it's hard to break through that sometimes. I think now in the current landscape, there's a real opportunity for savvy founders to be breaking into this space, because the second part for a founder is there's the transactional bit. You know, how am I going to get someone on the hook? How are they going to buy our products and services? How are we going to get in? This secret sauce opens up so many different doors to deepen the relationship within the client environment. So you're already talking to D&I groups. You're talking to deeper into HR. You're talking potentially into L&D. You're really throwing that stakeholder management piece out, where you could be doing joint. I see you're interested in this. We're interested in that too. Actually, we think that we can add so much value here, but would you talk to us about how you're doing? Oh, you've suddenly got a new stakeholder in the organization that in the transactional sales funnel, you didn't. And what's that stakeholder doing? They're positively talking about the interaction that they have with your organization. There's so many clever ways to take the commercial lens. That was a long way to answer your question. If you're under the commercial pressure, but it's flipping it and saying all of this is commercial.
Yeah.
All of this is a way in, and deepening and strengthening those relationships in client environments.
And when it comes to bringing in a more or trying to attract a more diverse talent pool, or trying to be more equitable in your recruitment processes, one of the quick fixes or one of the tools that you see deployed a lot in this space is AI, right? And I feel really mixed on this, right? Because some people are positioning this as AI removes the inherent human bias from the process. My view is, I think a lot of AI has inherent human bias built into it. What are your thoughts and feelings? And ultimately, this is about changing people, and it's about changing minds, and it's about humans interacting with other humans. So I've got my own personal views. I think you can guess from what I've just said what those are. But what are your views? Is AI a help or a hindrance when it comes to diversity in the recruitment process, in that moment of attracting and vetting, most importantly, vetting and screening talent?
Yeah. So I remember back in university, a good mate of mine got an iPhone. Tech guy, always had the thing before the thing, and he got an iPhone, and I'd never seen one before. And we were going to a festival in his camper van, a whole load of us, great crack. And on his phone, there was a map that had a blue dot, and it tracked. It was Google Maps. I'd never seen anything like it, right? There was a blue dot on a map, and as we moved, the blue dot moved too, and it blew my mind. I'd never seen. There wasn't sat navs, right in the early days, however, and I just couldn't believe it. And there's those moments when a shift in technology is a fork in the road moment that you go, well, it's changed now.
Yeah.
It's done now, right? There'll never be a before that moment, and you can track it. You know, I'm sure the first email and the first phone call and the first whatever. You know, when I saw AI, and when I see the things that I now see and different organizations share, and there will never be a before this moment with AI. It has changed. The problem is that the mindsets in those moments, a bit like the Industrial Revolution, isn't it? When they electrified the factories, they wanted to go back to steam. So in those change moments, there's a mindset catch up that goes, oh, AI, oh, it's cheating, oh, it's not right, oh, it's changed, it's already happened. So what we now need to do is to understand, in my view, where AI plays a role. It will totally change the shape of every industry, recruitment for sure, attracting talent for sure. It's already happened. We're just playing catch up. you're right that the programs that were written in Silicon Valley or wherever else come with inherent bias by whoever has programmed that. But if we look at the rate of learning of these platforms, the agenda to change them is something that can happen and will happen. Personally, I don't love it, but I've resigned myself to the fact that it's happened. It's done. It's a done deal and it's gone. In terms of that, I think, again, there is a real opportunity for people who, the way that you do attract talent is to keep that authenticity and to keep that consultative relationship with your clients. So much of what your clients are going to be able to get now is going to be automated, is going to come from an AI. Anything transactional is dead. It really is about that added value. It really is about that relationship piece and how you strengthen that. And so I have concerns in the early days of how and what we screen out. But funnily enough, I've been doing an analog experiment as something as part of the think tank, where I've been applying for jobs in different guises, and some other folks have been applying for in a very analog way to see screen. There's been some bigger studies done on it, but we're sort of doing our own sort of play at it. And it's incredible, how flawed the screening process, the sifting process, the early door stuff, how flawed it is today, how basic it is today. Do I think that AI, when it is finally plugged into all the different databases, it can scan me as a digital presence and present me to roles that I either have the direct skills or, sort of related skills or whatever? Of course. It's a done deal. It's going to happen. It's going to present our digital entities and our online profiles and our backgrounds and everything about us to employers. That is a good thing in terms of attracting talent. But you're right that there are some real warning signs that we need to do about how we bake into that the protections and the fail-safes. I wouldn't mind so much if we were better, I would say, in the recruitment space at attracting and retain, from a recruitment perspective, attracting, and from a hiring perspective, retaining. If we were better at that than we are now, I think there would be a stronger argument. I think where we need to be on EDI, if that's 100%, I would say we're at 20% of where we need to be, because you just need to look at representation across all organizations for the FTSE 200, FTSE 250, FTSE, do you know what I mean? We're not very good. Organizations don't look like modern Britain at all levels, including senior levels. So I think there's an opportunity to it. The bit that I would say is how you are communicating with talent is so critical now, more so than ever. Where that talent wants to work, the expectations talent have, generational expectations, and flexible working, and how inclusive those environments are. I would say we're failing from the job advert. A lot of focus is on when they start and how we keep. The work we're doing at the moment is we're failing at how we're even communicating out to market.
And how so? How could people do that better?
So some of it's basic, some of it's a little bit unforgivable in this space at the moment. Very gendered language, rock star, ninja, all this sort of stuff. But even more subtly, there are gender decoders online, and I really recommend people just put that through. Women and men will respond differently to different language. Also, being really explicit in terms of the expectations of the role. Men will apply for roles in their mind if they sort of have 70% of what it's sort of looking for overall. Women won't apply 80-90% of expectations. So right from the very beginning about how we're positioning this, and also leading with what it's like to work here. What are you selling into that client space? Where are they going to work? What does it look like? What are they working on? Are they honest about where they are, where they're not going to be? What does it look like to be me in that kind of environment? Who is asking these questions? You know, do I recognize them? Do they represent me? Can I make any sort of form of, you know, common ground with them? Am I a piece of meat? Am I, you know, is it all sort of token stuff? Where is that authenticity coming from? Where is that connection coming from? You know, so right from the beginning.
People get lost in, I think in job descriptions, people get really lost in fluffy and generic language as well. When they're talking about what does it look and feel like to work here, everybody has the same bullet points about, like, we put people first, flexible working hours. And but what does flexible working hours mean? Like, how do you put people first? And sometimes I think it's so much more impactful to strip all that language back and just be quite straightforward, quite explicit about what that actually means in your organization.
Especially in the tech sector, you know, there is an attraction in the tech sector to folks with neurodiversity. You know, all of that stuff switches them off immediately because they don't know where to start with it. What are you asking me? Does that matter? How do I relate to that? Is that relevant? You know, and keeping that really specific. And then as you play it forward, and you do bring people into the funnel, how are you maintaining that sort of talent relationship while it's in the funnel and going through in a way that you're setting that candidate up for success? And, you know, again, around maybe psychometric tests aren't cut out for different types of clients. The way you communicate with them, the way that you engage with them while they're in the funnel, and also an analysis of what the diversity look like in your funnel at its widest point, and do you have the data on how that as a trend is progressing through your funnels for your roles? Because really you need to then be looking at, are we filling these folks before we even give the clients an opportunity, you know, to have access to that talent? You know, was it so narrow to begin with, and it was handled so badly on the way through that actually what we ended up with when it got to the point of interview was so poor?
Or you have people that you're losing throughout the process because your interview process isn't set up to be inclusive, right?
Totally.
And as the company grows, I mean, you can start out with the right intentions, right? But obviously this is something that you need to monitor and evolve over time. Like you said, right in those earliest days of setting this stuff up, you shouldn't be prescriptive. You know, it should be more about leading with authenticity, leading with heart, and creating a culture of psychological safety where people feel that they can be themselves. How do you, as time goes on, as a team grows, what are some really clear, actionable things that founders can put in place and embed to make sure that that continues to be the case? And you continue in the busyness of a fast growth startup to take time to hear people.
Yeah, and that is my background, transformation and change, right? So what are you pinning this to? What does that internal process, those internal systems, that infrastructure look like? And for me, it's about trialing, piloting. That's your advantage as a small organization. That is your superpower. But what infrastructure are you plugging that back into? What have you learned? Fail fast, all that's great. But actually, over that time, what are we doing? What does the improvement measures look like? And it starts from, I know I'm repeating myself, but defining what the problem is, right? So where do we want to be in this space? How does it link to our commercial goals? Being really explicit, being really, really clear about it. Implementing that continuous improvement process is absolutely the number one practical tool. So question, what does continual improvement look like in your organization? Don't know. Okay, well, how do we create a system of continual improvement? Don't know. Okay, so there is a focus area of what have we tried, what's worked, what is the feedback system? And it can be really basic. I mean, I've seen really successful ones. I know we're all, you know, dying of Excel sheets or whatever, but you know, I've seen really successful continual improvement programs run out of simple sheets, which is, this is what we've tried, this is what we didn't work, this is what we're working on, this is how far we got with that. feeding that back into the way your management systems. People think that management systems in that sense come later. For me, they come right up front, and you just grow them and you scale them in the same way as you scale the business. Is what does our internal management system look like? From a D&I perspective, I think that getting your talent right from the beginning is an absolute focus. I think that if you grow a business that looks and feels just like you, because it's easy, because you're under pressure to scale, is something you're going to have to fix later on, not just because it's not representative, and not just because it's a token gesture, but because if you're trying to scale a successful business, it needs to reflect society. You need to have that breadth of intellectual diversity, cultural diversity, experiential diversity. You're going to have to bring that, or else you're at a competitive disadvantage, and there are other people out there that can do it better than you can. And especially if you're in a climate sustainability space, really this matters. This matters to all of the stakeholders in your space. So having a conversation up front, how do we grow in a way that's not tokenistic, and how do we do it in a way that we are attractive to people who want to come and work to us? And that again goes right back to that leadership piece about where do we want to be, how do we want to get there, really going over and over that core message, because that's your sales pitch. It's your sales pitch to yourself, as in, this is why we're doing this. This is why it's important to our business. This is why we want to be reflective of society. This is what value it brings to this organization. This is what value it brings to our client. That drumbeat narrative has got to be that sort of sales cornerstone that you're going to grow the things on. So those are practical things in terms of what does continual improvement look like. It's not just bullshit. It's not just woolly. It's saying, oh, we looked at how we were going to target certain groups, or we looked at a particular product and what its response was going to be, or we tried this, we didn't work. We're going to pilot this. What was the response? All of that.
Just as simple as making sure you've got regular one-to-ones with people, and in that one-to-one you leave space to talk about and how does it feel for you to work in this organization, to make sure that over time you're not slipping, right? And things like where do you stand on regular employee surveys, so that you're continually having gateposts where you're stopping and you're listening and thinking, are we still a great place for everybody to come and work?
Right. I mean, I take those things as read. If you're, that they are in place, that you are regularly speaking to your people in a very authentic, credible way on your one-to-ones, that they are psychologically safe spaces. There was a debate.
That to suddenly start not happening, right? And especially in these tech startup scale-up environments where things are happening ultra fast, and actually you have this one-to-one and you're just so focused on the work, what needs to get done, the deliverables, what you're getting out the door, and actually forgetting to leave regular space and time to make sure, are we still getting this right for the people? Because you can start with the right intention, and that intention can get lost as you get lost in the busyness.
Yeah, you're completely right. I see exactly what you're saying, and that is the leadership role. That is the role modeling piece, is to have that presence, to be able to make sure that you are scaling your business in a way that is taken on board how people are and how they're showing up, and also we talked about toxic positivity, and we talked about psychological safety. They are your moments. That's where, all of the rest is noise and fluff. Those are the moments that people eyeball to eyeball believe whatever it is you're selling. So you said before, we're people-centered, or all the nonsense that people write on the generic stuff. They're the moments that you come up close and personal to people. Are they aligned to, my needs? Do they respect my opinion? Am I able to communicate with them in a truthful way? Have I got their time? Have I got their focus? Is this just a tick box exercise where everything okay? Yeah, you're okay. Yeah. And really, there is a leadership development curve here, which is, how do I shelter from the shit that is on fire up here to create these moments of safety here, because ultimately having this security, this psychological safety for my folks is going to support me to achieve those things. And that not everybody's cut out for that. That's the other problem. People think that just because you're in that role, or just because you've got the funds have hit the bank and you're off, that means that the ingredients are there for it to work. And the harsh reality is it isn't. And unless you invest in good leadership coaching, good leadership mentoring, taking the time to look at, invest in those things, you're in trouble. You might be lucky. You might create enough space by ringing the bell, getting the banana, growing, that you've bought yourself some space to do it. But I think that the simple human element is something you can do from the offset, is how do I lead? And I think that we hear it so often. There's so many podcasts and so many things, it's a leadership and this is a leader. You're not a leader until you lead. It's just, I know it's a title, that comes, with the territory because you are more senior. But actually you're not a leader until you lead. And what does leadership look and feel like to you?
Yeah.
Too deep a topic to go into. But the other thing I will say is, especially from a VC perspective, is there's got to be more questions asked about the emotional intelligence that's embedded in senior positions, in founder roles, and a real analysis on what that emotional intelligence looks like. And I think we underestimate that in the new, where the market is going, at our peril. And where we have that commercial lens, happy days, that's great, that's needed. And if there's support from that, where are we getting that emotional intelligence in those leadership roles? Because you are in trouble if it's lacking, if we predict where the market's going.
Yeah, totally right. And you hit the nail on the head there about, often these founders, they might be a first-time founder. They're perhaps not experienced in this stuff, and they are learning as they go, and they need to invest in this. I think there's another aspect tandem to that, which is that unfortunately, the reality is that a large proportion of tech founders and climate tech founders that we're dealing with are men, are white cisgender men. Data shows us that's where the VC money is going. Something like 98% of all VC money is going to, male-founded teams. And I speak to a lot of these founders that would consider themselves allies. They've got, genuine intentions, but they're going to have blind spots that are inherent to their privilege. Of course they are. They might not even realize they have those blind spots. So that and a lack of experience, right, in tandem. And they've got all the best will and desire and the right heart. But the lack of experience and these blind spots combined can mean that despite the right heart, it can get lost. So yeah, they need to invest in this stuff. What resources would you recommend? And I'm talking here like, coaching, mentoring, absolutely important. But I'm thinking like free, easy to access things that they can, like self-learning. Where would you direct these people that have the right heart but just don't know where to go to start to self-learn?
So it's a tricky one, because I can't on one hand say, please don't go to prescription and look at stuff generically about, today I'm going to learn about trans rights. Today I'm going to look at, the complexities of neurodiversity or whatever, So for me, it's about, obviously, organizations like ours, call us. We know that you are struggling. We know you're not across these things. You would bring on support, commercial consulting for issues. That is absolutely what we are there to do, is to provide that. But before you do that, I think you need to be really, really clear on that bit that we've talked on a couple of times about what is your purpose here. What is it you're trying to achieve? Because if you say to somebody who's already under pressure, what should I go and read? There are so many different aspects, so many different challenges, and the problem is that they're so nuanced. So, we hear about it all the time in terms of underrepresentation of women, for example. Do you mean white women? Do you mean women with children? Do you mean women of color? Do you mean women with neurodiversity? Do you mean women with caring responsibility? And you could take that to any application. So really, the first bit for me is understanding what is your narrative, what is it you're trying to achieve, what do you want your organization to look like, what are your challenges and your clients' challenges, and and when you're in that position to be able to define the problem, you can then look for solutions that are related to those problems.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? If you define what the problem is, you can then go to market and say, well, I've got a problem with, I'm not up in this area, I'm not across this. My clients are, it's a priority for my clients. It caused me a bit of an issue. Do I need leadership development? Do I need specific resource? Do I need somebody who can provide me with an insight into these issues? Do I need people who can provide this type of stuff? Until you've defined the problem, and this is what I'm saying is the real frustration, is that we have such a culture of just jumping to, oh, what's the fix? What's the fix? We haven't defined the problem. So define the problem.
Sometimes the blind spots can be that you don't know there's a problem.
Right.
Right. So yeah, it's hard to define the problem if you don't see the problems there. I suppose what I'm thinking is, how can you evolve your mindset to a point that you're removing those blind spots so you can be visible? You can see those problems, right? I mean, I don't know if this is too tangential, perhaps, but I mean, I think that there's great power in stories. And I think that sometimes, people broadening just their cultural diet, the things that they're reading, the things they're consuming, the TV programs they're watching, the films that they're watching, to be, slightly outside perhaps what they would normally read or watch or listen to, because watching a story of somebody that's been on a journey that's entirely different to yours will help you to see the world through a lens that isn't your own lens all of the time. Right. And I think it can be really easy. And you see this, this may not be a fair point to say, but you see perhaps this is a real stereotype, so bear with me. But perhaps in the tech space, you might only be consuming bubble content within a real kind of echo chamber. Yeah, sure. Content that's made by people that are like you, for people like you, and that's what you read and that's what you listen to. And diversifying out of that can just open your mind that little bit to go, oh, I didn't realize you saw the world like that. Now, if I take it to an example of, I'm a mum, I have 2 young children. I follow on Instagram some mums, right, who moan about the mental load and moan about the lack of equity in the domestic chores in their house. More men should be watching those, because I go, yeah, I know it's difficult. Right. Sometimes a man will watch that video and go, God, I didn't even realize. No, that is really shit. Yeah, we shouldn't be doing that. But I see it now. So is there something in that? I mean, I don't know. Do you think that is too tangential, or do you think it is important for founders leading businesses to make sure that they're kind of opening themselves up culturally to things outside of what they know, to give them that broader mindset, to spot the problems and to be more empathetic in their viewpoint?
Yeah, it's too deep for the time we have left, but so I agree that there's an issue from a social media perspective. No matter whether you're in tech or not, you get the content that the algorithm sends to you that you respond to, and it is entirely an echo chamber. And so by that reason, I think research has shown that we dig into our positions deeper when we're challenged in any of those spaces around our views. It's not a platform that allows us to find debate and common ground. And typically we don't go, oh, I get that now. I now suddenly, because it's designed to create conflict. Conflict sells. I agree. You don't agree. I'm red. You're blue. That's the algorithm. But I do believe that talking adult to adult, to founders, to leaders, is to say, you already know the topics you're triggered by. You already know the conversations you don't wade in on. You already know the things you're not comfortable with. I don't need to tell you that you are not as briefed or not across or not as comfortable or not as articulate in a whole range of issues. Right. You already know that. What I need you to do is to have the curiosity and the motivation to want to lead or to want to grow an organization that is, accepting, understanding of lived experiences and so on. If you want to lead, if you want to scale a successful organization, this is the gig. You go and get briefed on the stuff you're not briefed on. You go and get briefed on the stuff that helps the organization commercially. You go and fix your development areas. And that curiosity has to come from you. It's that Lean Six Sigma. When you have pragmatists like me who are pushing this shit from the sidelines and telling professionals how to perform better on the pitch, it goes nowhere. It has to be a pull. And it's got to be you saying, this is better for me, it's better for my business, it's commercially successful, socially successful, and more successful for me. It's got to be that pull. And what we've got to work on is actually that motivation and that curiosity bit, that we are all, you win. You mentioned white cis men in tech. We all win if you get it. We all win if if this is being pulled by you into these spaces, and you leave a legacy, and you are a trailblazer, and you are someone we can aspire to be like, and you are someone that we respect, as opposed to blame and shame. It's your fault. It's all on you. You always get the bloody money. That's the money shot. Because by creating that change in narrative where it isn't blame and shame, and you don't get me and you don't understand me, and it's not fair that I'm not here, and it's a closed shop, because there's only so much shit you can deal with. I've got this to do, I've got that to do. I can't. It's not my fault that I was born this way. It's not my fault that the system has grown this way. I can only do what I can do. And I think we have to be more creative and more understanding in how we get good people who happen to be in those positions to change and move the dial for everybody else in an authentic way, that they go, yes, that's the kind of person I am. And that's what I want to unlock at a leadership team, is that real curiosity and passion to make society better, and start with what you can influence, which is your organization or your team.
Yeah. Fix it in your backyard. Exactly. Yeah. Well, Ed, as always, it's been fascinating, and I could talk to you all day. I think I said that last time we spoke. But thank you so much. I know you've got a poorly child upstairs, so I will let you get back to parenting, the most important job of them all, and where all this good stuff starts, right? But thank you so much for spending an hour of your time with me to share those insights, share those learnings, and that advice really to the founders that are listening to this, who hopefully will listen to this, will learn from it, and will go out and lead these businesses of the future in the right way with the right heart.